down below in the comments. All right, now let's go to the next topic of the day, which is the very anticipated Star Wars The High Republic. And I wanted to talk with you guys because there's a lot going on here. It's going to start as a publication. So the next wave of Star Wars films after the sequel trilogy, because we already have 7, we already have 8, we already have 9, and it's in the air. There's a lot of people that like it. There's a lot of people that do not like that trilogy, and some people like parts of the trilogy, you know, and there's things that are good to pick out of it and things that are not. Some people want it to be absolutely shoved into canon and shoved it as and recognized only as a fan fiction from now on. I've gotten those messages from you guys. You know who you are. And I've had plenty of conversations about that. Regardless of all of this, most people have been clamoring, please give us an Old Republic storyline. And I've got news for you. This is not that. So if you were thinking, oh my gosh, they're doing the Old Republic, wrong. They are not doing the Old Republic yet. I do think they will do a project for the Old Republic, but this, my friends, is the next big wave of Star Wars projects, and it is not the Old Republic. It is a time period between the Old Republic and the prequels. So let me see. I have to mirror this for you guys. Old Republic is way back here. I think it's something like 4000 BBY. Like, it's a while ago, if I'm not mistaken. You guys can double check me on this. But then time passes, you know, 1,000 years, another 1,000 years, another 1,000 years. We're encroaching upon the time of the prequels. 200 years prior to the prequels is the High Republic. And then right after that is the Phantom Menace. And then you have the Clone Wars. And then you have the Revenge of the Sith. And then you have, you know, from there, you're moving on into the stuff we already know. Like the games and Rebels and Rogue One and Solo and all that stuff. Not particularly in that order. And so now I'm going to read to you guys this article, but I want to talk to you guys about whether or not the question of the day is this, guys. Is the High Republic a good thing, and are you excited for it? Or is it a bad thing, and are you not excited for it? That's what I want to know from you guys. Is it good, and are you excited? Or is it bad, and you're not excited? I want to hear that. As we talk, you can feel free to vote and then change your minds, and I want to hear from you. Fill the comments up with your votes on that. All right, so let's start reading. Lucasfilm to launch Star Wars The High Republic publishing campaign in 2020. New stories will explore the Star Wars galaxy set 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. That's 200 years. Likely the only Jedi on the council that will be alive is Yoda. Very, very likely. Because yeah, he was 900 years old by the time he died in what's it called, the Return of the Jedi. So then later this year, Lucasfilm will launch an epic new era of Star Wars storytelling that will be explored through multiple voices in adult and young adult novels. I'm not sure why it's saying voices here. Maybe it just means mediums. I don't know if they are going. Okay. I do think they will do a show for this. Probably animated, which is going to be hopefully cool. I don't have any reason to believe that other than they've done a series for every single time frame so far that they've made movies for. So I do think we will eventually see this, but right now we're talking about publishing. So I'm curious if they're just going to put it into audiobook or something. But it says here, children's books and comics from a variety of publishers, including Disney, Lucasfilm Press, Del Rey, IDW Publishing, and Marvel. And I have those right here listed so you guys can see that. Disney, Lucasfilm Press, Del Rey, Marvel, IDW, Titan Magazines, Abrams, B&M Books, Viz Media, DK, and Insight Editions. So those are the publications that are going to be pushing this new wave of Star Wars into the galaxy. So it says here, Star Wars The High Republic, which has previously been referred to as Project Luminous, will be set in an era when the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Order are at their zenith, about 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. This period on the Star Wars timeline will not overlap any of the filmed features or series currently planned for production. giving creators and partners a vast amount of room to tell Star Wars stories and new adventures and original characters. So there's some really cool artwork here for the High Republic, which looks really nice. Like I'm actually really excited for some of these publications because on the artwork alone, it's looking really fun, really original, and it's based on the early Republic order where the Jedi and the Republic first organized together to put peace in the galaxy as implemented by law. And so that is very exciting. I do like the premise, but we're going to continue on because there is plenty to discuss here. There is a video that I won't show here, but I wanted to point out a couple of things from the video. So here it says, "We are so excited to be opening up such a rich, fertile area for our authors to explore," says Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. "We'll get to see the Jedi in their prime." And then it says, "Star Wars The High Republic features..." I'll go back and comment on this again. I'm going to do a little bit more commentary on this part because it is a lot to talk about here. But there are a couple things here that do concern me, and I will talk about those after we get through this. So it says, "Star Wars The High Republic features the Jedi as we've always wanted to see them, as true guardians of peace and justice. This is a hopeful, optimistic time when the Jedi and Galactic Republic are at their height. But of course, into this glorious new era, something wicked this way comes," says Lucasfilm Publishing creative director Michael Siglain. "This initiative will give readers, young and old, a new corner of the galaxy to explore through rich, meaningful stories. Plus, readers will learn what scares the Jedi." I like that part. I like the part that says, they wanted to explore, something wicked this way comes, and answer the question, what scares the Jedi? That does sound like a very intriguing tagline to add to this promotion. You know what I mean? It sounds like, okay, you got my attention, but they did start, and I know that they can't really get around this. I mean, this is something that unless they want to do some major overhauling with staff, it's always going to be like oh no, what's going to happen here? Whenever we hear the name in Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy, I am a supporter of Kathleen Kennedy as a producer. I really like Kathleen Kennedy as a producer because she's freaking good at that. But she is not good at being a creative officer over Star Wars. She's not good at that. She failed in this sequel trilogy pretty big. Now, I am one to say, I'm willing to give people second chances. I'm willing to give people another opportunity to do it right. I'm willing to acknowledge if she is like, you know what, we've learned from our mistakes, this kind of thing, and we're ready to move forward. Okay, you know what? Let's see if she means that. But we haven't seen anything like that of the sort. It's been nothing but fan blaming when they don't like the project, and there's been a number of issues that have arisen from Kathleen Kennedy not getting her team on board to do the job that she wants done, or changing the plans midway through so that it ends up not qualifying the person she put in place originally to get the job done. It's been kind of a train wreck getting things done without issue. The only project I'm currently aware of that was under Kathleen Kennedy's supervision that did not have notable issues was The Mandalorian. That's the only one that I'm aware of currently. And I didn't hear anything going on with any of the animated series, but perhaps that's because I didn't follow closely enough. But as far as films, and even now with the Obi-Wan series, there have been issues along the path to getting these things out, including with Rogue One, which, by the way, became a masterpiece. It was beautiful. That is a Kathleen Kennedy win, but it was not without issues on the path. There was, who was it? Gareth Edwards? I can't remember who was supposed to do the Rogue One movie, and then midway through She was like, you know what? It's not working out the way we wanted it to. Bye-bye. And so she says, basically they split over creative differences, which is always the BS term that comes out for we just don't want you, or we don't like your style, or we don't like this. And for whatever reason, they could just end it all by saying creative differences. Every single studio I'm aware of, Marvel, Warner Bros., Disney, Universal, whenever there's a falling out of a director, it's almost always creative differences, because that's the softest way to say we got the wrong person, or we put the wrong person in the place, and we didn't get on the same page when we started. So that's kind of like an issue that I've had with Kathleen Kennedy, that almost everybody that I have talked to has had with Kathleen Kennedy. They either blame Disney as a whole, or they narrow it down and say, you know what, we've looked at all the problems, and it doesn't appear to be exclusively Disney, because the Clone Wars, Rebels, Mandalorian, Rogue One have all been great. Solo is debatably great. Like there's a lot of things in there that are quite wonderful with Star Wars. It's the sequel trilogy pretty much for the most part that sucked. And that's, again, it's to blame Kathleen Kennedy, because she's at the top, like the buck stops at the top. It always goes up and up and up and up until there's nowhere else to go. Kathleen Kennedy should have gotten her teams in line. And now she's, again, apparently in charge of what's going on here with the publications. So I'm not saying that it's going to be bad because she's there. I'm just a little concerned about how much creative influence she will have on this project. And I'll tell you why I think that she does have creative influence, is because of this image right here you see before you. So what I'll do is I'll read this last paragraph, and then I'll tell you why I think that Kathleen Kennedy's sticky fingers are all over this creative project. So it says here, this was the golden age for the Jedi, meaning the High Republic, 200 years before the Phantom Menace, and also a time of galactic expansion in the Outer Rim. So expect there to be rich tales of exploration, charting out the galaxy, meeting new cultures, and discovering what pioneer life in the Outer Rim was like. This is an incredible sandbox for our storytellers to play in, both within publishing and beyond, which means it won't just be publishing. So what they're saying here is that this is going to open the door for not just books, comics, novels, magazines, etc., but it's going to wind up off of a page, which means either they're talking about audio, like an audiobook or a podcast story or something, or more likely, it's going to be a TV show or a film or animation or something like that. So I expect that we'll see much of this content wind up on Disney Plus. I almost guarantee it. Depending on how it launches. If it launches and literally no one's reading it, they'll scrap it, because they're scared of Solo Part 2. They don't want to put out something that's wicked expensive and then have nobody pay to see it and they've lost money. They won't continue that path. Hopefully, I hope it does well. I would love to see Star Wars stories in this new era. I would love to see that. But here's where it starts to get a little concerning for me. So in this video, this intro video, you can see you see them explain like the era, the time frame, the team they've got on board, and this is where I'm going to get a little social political for you. If you guys didn't get a chance, let me see if I can switch this over to there we go. So you can see this this screen. This is the storyboard that the team that is making the High Republic publications, when they're writing these stories, when they're putting it all together, they're showing us right here on this board exactly what they want in this series. So this was their like list of things to do, points to hit to put into Star Wars for the High Republic. And some of them are they're good, I think. A lot of them are very good, but there's a couple here that do concern me because, and I'll tell you why when we cross that bridge. First, it says authentically lived in. Next question of the day, someone please tell me what the heck that means. Authentically lived in. I think it means they want it to feel They want the world to feel kind of like worn. They want it to feel like it's like when you walk into the Shire in Middle Earth, it feels like it exists. It feels like people live there. It feels like a place that you can visit. And I think that might be what they're talking about here. But I'm not 100% sure on what they mean by authentically lived in. If you think you've got the answer, put that in the comments because I want to know. Surprise. And the next one it says under fiction is surprise. So as a fictional story, they want to make sure that the story they're writing has surprise. It's got some sort of like plot twist or something like that. They want to make sure that there's something in there that we don't already know, and that it gives us something like, wow, that was cool. That is a good thing. That is definitely a good thing to have in a fiction. The next thing is one of the things, and hear me out, is one of the things that is concerning. Diversity is a very good thing, but you're going to see this not once but twice on this list when I think it already is there. So one thing that is odd is diversity has always been a part of Star Wars, and they keep putting this on the posters. They keep putting this on the trailers. No one cares that diversity is there. Everybody loves Mace Windu. No one is saying that they don't want diversity in Star Wars. They don't want to be told that we need to agree with something we already agree with. It's kind of annoying when people are constantly preaching at you things you already know. You know what I mean? Like if someone came up to you every day and was like, let's say, beating up smaller people and taking their lunch money is not nice. It's not nice. It's not nice. Like that is like, I know, I already know that. Like, what are you doing? Like you don't have to repeat it all the time. Like, I think we get it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like how this feels a lot of the time, but they push that because of what happened with the crappy character Rose Tico. And they think that everybody who doesn't like Rose Tico doesn't like her because she's Asian. And that's not the case. She was a garbage character. The writing sucked. And I made a video about this defending Kelly Marie Tran, saying that Kelly Marie Tran actually did a good job with the character. The character sucked, though. That was the problem. And so I made a video on this. You guys can let me know what you think. I don't have any problem with diversity. I have a problem with them pushing diversity down our throats and shoving it like we don't want it. Like we don't need, and so that to me seems like another red flag, because they're going to continue. Kathleen Kennedy is going to continue to say, you don't like Kelly Marie Tran, you're one of the racist fans we don't need here. And it's like, no, I don't like your character. That character sucks. And so that to me is like what that is. So that to me seems like we're going into round 2 with Kathleen Kennedy on this whole, if you don't like her product, then you don't like the people that are performing in the movie, TV, comic, whatever. So like that kind of preachiness is on the way from what I can see, because it's on this list twice. If you see under fiction, it's the third one, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth one down on under Star Wars wishes is representation / diversity, which I thought was the same thing. But representation does not just mean race. That's going to mean they're going to invite. They're not invite, but they're going to again push LGBTQ type of content into Star Wars, which again they kind of did in The Rise of Skywalker for like 2 moments, if I remember correctly, because I only saw the film once, but it was very briefly at the end, and then shortly after they did it, like 12-30 seconds later or something, they showed it again in the very, very final shot. And it was actually like missable. Like it was so quick it was missable, but again, they're going there with that, which again sounds to me like preaching. So that's another thing that's very classic Kathleen Kennedy, pushing this stuff. preaching it again to a bunch of people that it's like, why do you feel the need to tell me that, And so anyway, it's like, whatever. These are things that concern me. Now, I'll show you the things that I do think that are good that I'm looking forward to. It says here, actual ending, which if they said ending, I would have been like, from a writing perspective, okay, that's, that's very, it's good that they're thinking about the ending, because there has been problems with Star Wars not having ending plots. I recognize that. That's cool. But when they say actual ending, that makes it sound like it's a jab at the Rise of Skywalker. Actual ending sounds like they're jabbing at perhaps the Clone Wars, perhaps Rise of Skywalker. It could be maybe Rebels, because Rebels ending kind of bleeds into the rest of canon Star Wars. So it opens again. It goes from a closing point to woo, and it opens back up into the original trilogy. So it's an ending for something, but it's an opening for other things. And so, which is good. I like that. And especially being that this is like a second like, we're going to be talking about this in the future. Like, you guys know the prequels, right? Which is Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and the Clone Wars. This is now the prequel. This is like a prequel to the prequels. So this is double prequel. And so now they're saying they want an actual ending, which is also, it's kind of funny to me now, because it seems like a jab at the Rise of Skywalker, maybe a jab at how Clone Wars had a big cliffhanger, but also, why would you want a hard ending if it's supposed to bleed into eventually, like it's 200 years before the Phantom Menace, but you want a hard ending right before the Phantom Menace, and it's a prequel. I would imagine that means that all of the characters we're going to be following are going to die. They're not going to make it. Maybe they do. I don't know that. Or maybe they died peacefully. Like, maybe the stories that are told are set 200 years prior because they're the ones that set the table for the Galactic Republic, but they didn't get to make it there. It's kind of like in biblical terms, the Israelites, coming out of Egypt, but then never making it to the Promised Land. Like they were able to, they had to wait until their generation passed and then go to the next one, because of their sins. So we have again, after that we have feelings. That's good. I like feeling when I connect with something. That was one of the things that may sound trivial to you guys, but feelings were greatly lacking in the sequel trilogy. There was like no real emotional pull. In fact, the only emotional moment that I can really remember from the sequels, thinking back briefly, was, I mean, other than anger at the whole trilogy, but was being sad and really, really frustrated when the what's it called? When Han Solo was killed. That was the sad part to me. When Leia died, I was already bitter from like The Last Jedi. So I was like, I'm not feeling it. Like, I'm not emotionally drawn. I'm numb. I'm emotionally numb to this particular story in Star Wars. It doesn't count for me. And with this, obviously they're trying to focus on making sure there's an emotional attachment between the characters and the readers, and that's a good thing. Relatable characters. Rey is not a relatable character. Rey is one of the least relatable characters that's ever been written. She's just automatically good at everything without having to try and fail. I mean, it's shocking why they thought to make Rey the way that they did. It didn't make any sense. I mean, she was so unrelatable. It's ridiculous, which is hilarious because they almost, for The Force Awakens, they tried to mimic Luke Skywalker almost identically, just gender swapped, but they still didn't hit the nail on the head. So like with Luke, growing up on the farm, he was frustrated because I have to work out in the field all day, or I have to, moisture farm with my uncle. And, he's got his uncle, his aunt. His uncle's kind of hard on him. Aunt's a little more sympathetic, but, what are you going to do? And then, boom, he gets swept up in this amazing thing, which was his lifelong dream, but it's also a journey for him with an arc that has like struggles and tribulations and suffering, massive suffering, loss of an arm, and many more other things that he has to go through. Rey didn't go through anything. The only, if I'm not mistaken, I think the only damage she experienced was like at the very, very end. She didn't even take any battle damage, if I'm not mistaken. I think she fell once, and that was it. Like, she didn't get punched. She didn't get hit with a lightsaber. She didn't, like, it was pretty much a smooth ride the whole way. And, like, she got caught a couple of times, but there was no suffering. There was no, like, real sense of danger either. And that was unrelatable. It's completely unrelatable. So there's a lot of people out there that are fans of Daisy Ridley. I like Daisy Ridley too. I don't like the character Rey. And I don't hate her either. I just think she's a crappy character. Kylo Ren proved to be a pretty cool character, which was good. I liked him. And I loved Poe in 7 and 9, but I did not like Poe in 8. They did him no justice in that movie. It was awful. So anyway, sweeping epic is a really good thing. Humor is a really good thing. And for the Star Wars category, so they've broken it into 3 categories. Like, what do we want from this High Republic storytelling from a fiction standpoint? And that's the list they gave. From Star Wars, like, they wanted it to be not pro-war, which, I think that lines up pretty much, because the Jedi were not pro-war either. They did not want to become warriors. They did not, I mean, they were warriors in a sense, but they were peacekeepers. They didn't want to be soldiers, though. That was not what they wanted to be. So not pro-war does make sense. I know that can be interpreted very politically. I actually interpreted it politically the first time I read it, but then I had to think about it for a second. I was like, okay, no, in the context of Star Wars, this does make sense. I don't think that's inherently real world political. It's part of Star Wars, I guess. And then droids. I'm all about droids. Let's do it. Droids, more droids. I love the droids from the Old Republic, so I hope they do bring that somehow feed that in there. Scope, which means they want it to expand the vastness of the Star Wars stories, the different worlds, the different cities, different kinds of races and species, and that kind of thing. I want to see all of that too. It has to be mythic, which means they're probably going to dive a lot more into the Force itself. They're probably going to dive maybe even into like the Night Sisters and other races and species that are very occult. There's probably going to be a lot of, so then it says space and lightsaber battles. Very, very good. That is what people want in Star Wars. And then also it says no single main character, which I think is a very good call. That is a very, very, very good call. Please make 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 20, 50 characters that you're going to explore. Don't have one main guy or girl. Please have multiple options, because I think that's one of the things that sucked about the sequel trilogy, was that there was one person it focused on, and if you don't like that character, you hate the whole thing. It's hard to sympathize when the whole story revolves around one person and you don't like that person. So for the High Republic, I think it's a very good thing. No single character. Plus, it's very Star Wars to not have a single main character. For instance, like Han Solo was a main character. Luke Skywalker, even though he is the main character, he was a main character as well, because people really clung to the other characters. And there was plenty of story that covered the other characters as well. Lando, also by Empire, was a main character. You also had, he was a secondary main character, but he was also a main character. He was like, if you have the Holy Trinity, it's Luke, Leia, Han, and then it's also, you also have, Chewie, and you have Lando, and you got Boba Fett, and you got Boba Fett is, I guess, maybe less than that even, but as a fan favorite, he's way above that. But you get the drift. You got to have multiple characters, because if you don't like one, you can still like the other. That's going to help them out big time. And I'm looking forward to that, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be several characters I don't care for. And there'll probably be plenty that I do. So that's great. The Force. Duh. You got to focus on the Force. Give us some stories about that. And then it says complicated monsters down at the bottom. It gets cut off there, but I have it on my side. Complicated monsters. I'm not sure why it needs to be complicated. Complicated monsters. But, you know, I'm all about monsters. So, like, they've got Rathtars. They've got the Mythosaur. They've got Rancor. You know, they've got all kinds of crazy Star Wars beasts. The Mudhorn, the new clan. Lots of things that can be explored and we'll get to see and learn about. So, yeah, cool. I don't know why they have to be complicated. Maybe complex. Maybe complex would be a better word for that. But maybe they do want to complicate things with these monsters. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Star Wars wishes. Now, this is where it gets interesting. For Star Wars wishes, they put High Republic as the first thing, which means they want to discuss the glory days of the Republic before its demise by the entrance of Sheev Palpatine to corrupt the Republic. So, I am excited to hear about that. I do hope that it is inherently a bit political. Not that I want real world politics. I don't want I don't want a bunch of SJW nonsense in there necessarily. I don't want a bunch of real world issues. I don't want them to be like, oh, I don't want them to start being like, oh, they're building a wall, that's evil, or oh, that's super good. Or I don't want any real world semblance, really. I want it to have an element of politics, but the way they handled it in the prequels, even though there was a touch of that, because you're dealing with a republic, which America is a republic, it's similar, I guess, but they kept it very contained within the Star Wars universe. It was the Trade Federation and the Republic, and that was how they kind of worked that. So interesting to see how that worked out with the prequels. I like what they did with the prequels, so hopefully they can nail that again in the High Republic. With Relic Hunters, very interesting. I want to see what they're doing there. Maybe they're hunting for kyber crystals. Maybe they're hunting for Sith artifacts or something like that. That would be really cool. I would love to see that. Maybe the Relic Hunters are also Jedi. Maybe the Jedi are Relic Hunters seeking out ancient wisdom from ancient Jedi and ancient Sith from the Old Republic. That would be really tight. And that could be a really cool tie-in with the Old Republic as well. I would like to see that. University. University? That sounds boring. So to me, I mean, it could work out where it's like X-Men Evolution, where you're watching the Padawans in the Jedi Academy become Jedi Knights. That sounds fun. That does sound cool. But if it's just them constantly studying college style, I'd rather see them out in the wilderness, seeking out relics or trying to, go out and expand the Republic or something like that. I don't know. To me, school is kind of boring, but watching young Jedi learn new Jedi moves and stuff, that sounds fun. Learning about the Force is cool. Learning of the Force is tight, to quote the guy from Screen Rant. So, what's his name again? Ryan something? Anyway, so it says dinosaurs? Dinosaurs. So I think it's talking... Is it really talking about dinosaurs? I hope they don't do dinosaurs. I hope they do the mythosaur or dragons of sort. Not necessarily the dinosaurs that we know and learn about in our world. I want them to still be Star Wars-esque. They don't have dogs in Star Wars. They have loth wolves and they have other creatures that are similar, but they don't have huskies or German shepherds, because there is no Germany in Star Wars. And there's no Alaska in Star Wars, so in Star Wars, I hope that they keep it galactic, they keep it fantastical, they keep it alien. And so that's kind of what I want. Representation and diversity. This is where I go back to, this feels like a push. This feels like it's going to be very preachy, and I don't want that. If that happens, I'm just not going to read it. I'm like, okay, I'm bored. That's not what I signed up for. If I wanted that, I'd go to Vox. If I wanted that, I'd go to I don't know who. I don't know who else I'd go to. but I would go to somebody else for that. I would not go to Star Wars for that. So that would be my take. I cannot read the next word underneath representation diversity. It looks like it says like what does that look like to you guys? And I cannot read that first one. I cannot read the first word, but it says legends. So I don't know. Maybe it's gonna tie back in with Star Wars. I wish I knew what that first word said, but I don't. So I'm gonna leave that there. You guys, let me know if you know what that is in the comments. And then rival houses. That's kind of fun. So there could be rival houses of Jedi before the split. So like we've heard tales of Jedi that started on the path of Jedi and then left the order. Like Count Dooku, for instance, was one of those. He ended up joining the Sith. But not all of them joined the Sith. Many of them just became nomads or wanderers like Ahsoka. Ahsoka became a gray Jedi by upholding Jedi ways, classically speaking, but acknowledging that there is a balance to the Force and that you have to balance light and dark. And that there is a gray to the Force as well. I would like to see rival houses, maybe different orders of Jedi start to spring up where some of them believe that you can, like in the Quinlan and Voss stories, some of them believe that you could have attachments like a wife and children, that sort of thing, and still be a Jedi. And some believe that that was not the case because attachment leads to suffering through loss. And so that could be the case here. Sith Empire. That's a fun one, but I don't think that makes sense because the Sith Empire would have to be a historical, like that might tie in with the Relic Hunters because if I'm not mistaken, Darth Maul was like the first Sith that the Jedi were aware of for thousands of years. But who would be around is probably, depending on their age, Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagueis might be around this time. And whoever Plagueis' master was, I'm not familiar with who his master might be. I need to do some research on that. But yeah, so like taking back the timeline, it would be like Emperor Palpatine's master is Darth Plagueis the Wise. I'm sure you've heard the tragedy. And then Plagueis' master would likely be within this time frame. So Plagueis or Plagueis' master is probably around that 200-year mark before Palpatine was the reigning Sith. So, and Darth Maul was the first one the Jedi were aware of for 1,000 years, as far as I am aware. So they were operating in the shadows. If they're going to talk about the Sith Empire during the High Republic, it would not make sense if the Jedi knew about it. So don't expect a lot of Sith Jedi battles, but there will probably be a lot of Sith battling, I don't know, relic hunters or other people. Because they were around, they did exist. And so then below that we have chaos agents. I'm not sure what that is. That might be someone kind of like a chaos agent could be someone along the lines of an inquisitor, someone that is a force sensitive or a force user. Maybe they're not aware that it's called the Force. Maybe they're not aware of how to study it, but maybe they do use the Force in some capacity. I don't know. It could be the case. I'll be interested to see how that ends up with the Chaos Agents. And then down at the bottom it says, Splinter Group. It's hard to see because it kind of cuts off at the end. Splinter Group factions. It might say factions. It's hard to tell from here. Splinter Group factions. So that again kind of brings me back to rival houses. It could be like people leaving the Jedi Order, like I mentioned earlier, to create their own cult version of the Jedi, where they can have attachments and they explore the dark side and they're willing to use the Force for attack, not just defense and keeping the peace and knowledge and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we're at now. I will say, most of everything that's on this list, I think, is a good thing. And I am actually quite excited to see what they do here. The big red flag for me is Kathleen Kennedy weighing in on this thing. And then we see here that diversity is not mentioned once, but it's mentioned twice. That implies preaching to me. That implies that it's going to be a lot of heavy preaching. And if Kathleen Kennedy is the one handling press on this, then if you don't like their diverse characters, you're a racist. That's what it's going to sound like. That's what it seems like it's going to be to me, because that's what her and pretty much Rian Johnson have said throughout this entire thing. So that's going to be a bummer if that's the case. I hope they learn from that, from the past, and don't blame the audience for not appreciating their art. You know, because that just sounds like a snobby artist, you know, like not recognizing their problems, their issues. J.J. Abrams handled episode 9 quite nicely. He said that if you were someone that watched The Rise of Skywalker and had criticisms, then he totally respects that, and he understands. He has criticisms himself with the finished result. But if you went in and had no problems with it, he questions your sanity. And that's a funny way to say, you're probably not wrong. My movie totally has flaws. I recognize that, but I appreciate you watching the film anyway. That is what that says to fans, as opposed to the opposite when they say, you don't like this, then you're a racist, or you're a sexist, or you're a bigot, or you're a homophobe, or you're a xenophobe, or you're whatever. All the things, all the names that they throw out because they don't have arguments for, or they don't have the ability to acknowledge their own flaws or problems or shortcomings with storytelling. That's what they do. And so I hope that that's not the case, but I would be lying. I would be lying to you, the viewer, if I told you that that's not what I thought was happening here, because they put it down twice. First, just by itself as a fiction, and then under Star Wars wishes, they want representation and diversity. So I've got no problem with diversity, but if they're going to be preaching it at us, I think we can expect a similar outcome with The Rise of Skywalker, where these agendas take place over the importance of narrative storytelling and creative quality. So, and another thing that concerns me is Dave Filoni is nowhere to be seen in this lineup in this video. Let me see if I can get over here. There we go. Okay, so I know we've talked for quite some time. We're coming up on 1 hour here. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. You can watch, you can check this out. I will put the links to these in the description below after this video has uploaded to YouTube. Right now it's not there in the description, but I'll put it up after, so you can go back and you can check out all of these sources. But in the meantime, you know, this is kind of the name of the article here, and this one's from StarWars.com. So this one is from the actual source of sources. It's not Screen Rant, which is a good source, but, you know, also not Star Wars. And it is not, you know, CosmicBookNews.com, where a lot of rumors get passed around. This is actually Star Wars promoting their own stuff, and that's how they choose to promote it. So, yeah, so I would say I'm 75%. Maybe 70% excited. I'm 70% excited because it has potential. It's got a lot of potential, but there are red flags here, and I am a little worried. I want to know what you have to say about it, though, so let me know down below. All right, so let's go over. I know that was a big one, but let's go to the last topic, and I will keep this one brief. The last topic of the day is Legend of the White Dragon has returned, guys. So the Power Rangers fan fiction, or rather fan-made content by